The Vanishing Triangle is located directly outside Dublin to the west and spans 80 miles, stretching north and south. Between 1987 and 1998, 8 women disappeared and only 3 were ever found, unfortunately murdered. The disappearances were soon compared to each other. Was there a twisted serial killer, or was it all just a coincidence? Antionette Green Smith, who went by Angie, was the mother of 2 daughters. She went missing on July 12, 1987. Angie was on a night out with her friend. She went to a David Bowie concert the night before, on July 11th, then took a bus back to Dublin around 11:30. She continued her night out by the Heart Bar at O'Connell Bridge, then went to a disco called La Mirage Discotheque in Parnell Street. Angie and her friend ran into 2 men at the disco that the women knew. Around 2 a.m., the group left the club together. The ladies got into a small argument, and her female friend decided to head home, but gave Angie her house key. Angie continued to walk to a taxi stop with the men. The men took a taxi to the Bellymun area, while Angie walked by the Grissom Hotel towards the O'Connell Bridge. This is the last time she was seen, around 3 a.m. Her ex-husband Carl Smith reported her missing on July 14th, but Gardy told him to return with a photo of Angie the next day. He returned the next day with her friend, whom she had spent the night with when she went missing. She was last seen wearing dark blue denim jeans, a denim jacket, a David Bowie t-shirt, and size 5 navy blue high heels. She was also carrying a Texaco sports bag that has never been found to this day. On April 3rd, 1988, her remains were found near the Lamas Monument in the Glendhu Mountains, roughly 18 kilometers from Dublin, or a 30-minute drive. Her shirt matched the David Bowie t-shirt, and the key on her matched her friend's lock. Her head was covered with a plastic bag. She was sexually assaulted and strangled. A reenactment aired on television in Ireland, which led to a man who was a dog walker on July 12th. He was walking in Crawwell, roughly 2 miles from where Angie's body was found. Around 6 a.m., he walked towards a man who stopped momentarily and continued walking towards him. He said hello to the man, but got no response, and the man attempted to hide his face by turning away. He described the man as around 26 years old with a thin face, parted hair, and dark clothes. He noticed he was not appropriately dressed for the mountains. He said that the man was heading towards the car park. He was worried about his van because it was the only vehicle there, so he headed to his van with the 3 dogs. He noticed that the man was now talking with another man, and when the men saw him walking towards the car park, they began walking faster. When he reached his van, he could not see the men and never heard another vehicle. He shrugged it off and headed home. No one has ever been arrested in Angie's case, and it remains a mystery. Patricia Doherty was a 29-year-old prison guard at the Mountjoy prison in Dublin. She returned home from running different errands on December 23rd, 1991 at 9 p.m. She spent the day getting her hair cut and shopping for gifts at the Old Bawn Shopping Center. She left again to buy Santa hats for her child at the Old Bawn Shopping Center. After not returning, her husband reported her missing on Christmas Day. Guardia thought what I did, which was, why on earth did he wait 2 days to report her missing? He explained that because she worked at the prison, sometimes the schedule was erratic, and they did not always see each other. He worried when she was not home on Christmas. He called the prison and they said she had not come into work for the last 2 days. The last sighting of Patricia was at 9:20 p.m., walking past the Bridget Burke's pub towards the Old Bawn Center. She was also seen by a second witness entering a red car at the shopping center's entrance. This second sighting was not taken seriously because the witness was a known criminal, which is unfortunate. After all, it could have been credible and solved the crime. Who knows? He had nothing to gain, but because he had a history with the Guardia, they did not look into it. On June 21st, 1992, at the Wicklow Mountains in the Glass Mucky Breaks area, a man was cutting turf and found human remains. He noticed a brown mat coat under a collapsed bog. He ran to the nearest home to call the Guardia. It should be noticed that her body was found less than a mile away from Angie's body. They found a key in her pocket that fit Patricia's door. Dental records were able to identify the remains as Patricia. Her cause of death was strangulation. She had personal belongings near her body, such as her gold scarf. There had been no viable suspects or arrests made in her murder. Annie McCarrick was a 26-year-old single woman living in Sandymount, Dublin. She was initially from Bayport, Long Island in New York. In 1987, she moved to Ireland to study teaching at St. Patrick's College. She moved back to New York temporarily in 1990, but returned to Dublin in 1993. On March 26, 1993, Annie planned hiking in the Wicklow Mountains. She asked her friend, Anne O'Dwyer, to join her, but Annie recently injured her foot and could not go with her. It is believed that she probably went alone. After housemates left that morning to visit family for the weekend, Annie spent her day knitting until 11 a.m., then ran errands, including stopping at the bank and the Quinsworth grocery store on Sandymount Road. She returned home at 3 p.m., but left 15 minutes later, leaving her groceries unpacked. Her housemates noted this was out of character for her. She was seen by Bernard Sharon, the complex plumber, leaving the property. A few minutes later, she was seen walking past a local fast food shop towards the bus stop, boarded bus 18 towards Ranelagh, and then transferred to bus 44 in the village of Enniskerry in the mountains of Wicklow. She was seen on bus 44 by a former colleague named Amir, but they never spoke. However, she's sure she saw Annie. She would have arrived around 5 p.m., which would have been really late to explore the mountains, as it would get dark around 6:15 p.m. There were no actual sightings of her, and she would have stuck out. She was 5'8", with brown curly hair, a tweed jacket. Also remember, she's American, so her accent would have been noticed. A lady at the post office remembered seeing someone resembling Annie, but it could not be verified. She was possibly seen at a pub called Johnny Fox's. Sam Duran, a security guard, saw who he thought was Annie with a man she seemed to be friendly with. He described the man as 5'9", 24 to 28 years old, clean-shaven, athletic build, brown hair, and square-jawed. They never seen the man before that night. The man paid a small cover fee to enter the lounge. Another security guard remembered seeing a woman matching Annie's description around 9:30 p.m. She has been to the pub and walked from the village to the pub before, as it was only 5 miles. However, she got to the pub 4 hours after arriving to the village and was not seen between that time and never seen again. Annie McCarrick's disappearance was upgraded to murder on March 26, 2023. This is because a subject emerged that knew Annie and resided in Sandymount area. The Guardia pilled for a brown leather bag that Annie had with her during her last sighting, but this was never found. Eva Brennan was a single 39-year-old who was 5'7" and wore her brown hair short. Her family said she looked younger, almost 10 years younger. Eva was the type of person who stuck to a routine. On July 25, 1993, Eva attended Mass at the St. Joseph Tenor Church, then arrived at her parents' house around 1 p.m. to have dinner. However, she had a small argument with her siblings about the choice of food and ended up leaving. By July 27th, the family still had not heard from Eva, which was unusual as they spoke to her daily. David Brennan, her father, called her, but got no answer. He went to her apartment with the barman from his pub called the 108. They broke her window to find everything neat and undisturbed. He reported Eva missing to the Guardia later that day. The last confirmed sighting was her leaving her parents' home on Tempeloge Road. The family found the jacket she wore to her parents' house, so she did return home, but the pink tracksuit she was wearing was missing. Her handbag, keys, and money was also missing. It is not known why she left or where she went from there. The Guardian did not take her disappearance seriously, as she was 21 years old and did
not see evidence of a crime. They thought maybe she committed suicide as she suffered from depression, but she was on a strict Catholic and there was no note. David contacted Albert Reynolds, the Irish head of state. He convinced the Gardaí to take Eva's disappearance seriously. Unfortunately, by the point she was missing a month, the family cleaned her apartment. Therefore, no evidence was found. There was no sightings of her, which usually, as she would have had a walk on a busy road of Tempeloche and through the center of Teignmouth. To this day, there had been no sightings or tips given. On December 16, 1993, Marie Kilmartin from Bloud, an hour away from Dublin, worked her shift at 11 a.m. at the nursing home she worked at. At 4 p.m. after work in a work party, 2 of her co-workers dropped her off at home and watched her walk to the door. They invited her to another work party, and she said she might go. Marie suffered from agoraphobia, so they doubted that she would show up. I researched this for another case I'm working on, and it's an anxiety disorder where you avoid situations that might put you in dangerous situations like closed places, crowds, and the dark. I think hers was more focused on the dark since that was a fear. She's actually from the county of Sligo, but moved to Laos and brought a home with the help of her father. Her housemate returned home at 6 p.m. to find Marie gone, the lights off, and groceries left unpacked, similar to Annie. After 2 hours, when she still did not return, her housemate was worried as her agoraphobia made her fear of the dark debilitating. She called the nursing home and they said that she left at 4 p.m. and never attended the second party. The housemate decided to go to bed for some reason. The next morning, December 17th, she contacted her neighbor, whose husband was a Garda sergeant. Unlike Eva, they took the case seriously because of her mental health. They found no evidence of where she could have gone. However, they went through her phone records, and at 4:20 p.m. she received a call from a payphone near St. Fintan's Hospital outside of Portlaoise. The call lasted 2 minutes and was determined to be taken by Marie. She was the only one home at the time. A witness described the caller as a man in his 30s, 5'6" to 5'9", with dark hair. Neighbors did not see Marie after she was dropped off around 4 p.m. A witness claimed to see her in a grocery store the next day, looking disheveled and confused, the day after she disappeared, but this could not be confirmed as the woman did not know Marie personally. Her case went cold into June 10th, 1999, when a prison officer named Thomas Deacon, in a bog next to a drainage ditch near Pim's Lane, near Mount Millick, the body showed considerable signs that a lot of effort was taken to hide it, with a cement block on the body and the entrance of the bog covered with a pram. And the body was confirmed to be Marie, with her jacket covering her body, and through jewelry and dental records it's believed that her killer was a local because the place she was found was remote and an illegal dump-in site. Her cause of death was ruled strangulation because her thyroid cartilage was damaged. They ruled that she was not sexually assaulted as her clothes were intact. 2 weeks later, 2 men were arrested, in his 20s and one in his 50s. The 50-year-old knew Marie and was acting suspicious. There was no evidence that they did not confess, so they had to be released. In 2008, 3 individuals were arrested, a man in his 40s, a woman, and a man in their 60s. Unfortunately, there was no evidence, so they were released as well. There's not been any new leads or arrests. Marie's daughter, Anne, has kept her mom's case in the media and in the Guardian's mom. Imelda Keenan, a 22-year-old woman, was living in Waterford City, 100 miles south of Dublin. She was originally from Mount Millick, but moved to Waterfield in the 80s. She was engaged to her fiancé, Mark Wall. On January 3rd, 1994, she left her home to collect a welfare check from the post office at 1 p.m. The post office was closed due to New Year's falling on Saturday, making the following Monday a bank holiday. She was last seen by a doctor's secretary on Lombard Street, stopping in the middle of the street, allowing her to pass, then turned the corner at Tower Hotel on Lombard Street. The secretary knew Imelda, so this sighting was considered credible. Her family went to her apartment after she was reported missing, and her glasses, handbag, and cigarettes were still there. This and the fact that she had presents addressed to her unopened led them to believe she did not run away. The Guardia felt as she ran away, and her disappearance was not suspicious. They searched the river, but there was no sign of her, and there had been little to no clues to where she went. JoJo Dullard originally lived in Kilkenny and moved to Dublin City, where she worked as a waitress for 2 years before moving to Kilkenny in 1995. She worked several waitress jobs at local pubs before securing a more stable job with her friend Mary Keenan. In the morning of November 9, 1995, JoJo took a bus from Kilkenny to Dublin City to pick up her welfare check from the post office. The bus back to Kilkenny was not expected to depart until 6 p.m., so JoJo decided to go to the city centre to visit a pub she frequented while living in Dublin City called Bruxelles to visit friends. She spent time with her friend who was working at the pub around 2:30. The women were joined by JoJo's ex-boyfriend. Her ex and her hit it off and they rekindled the relationship. She decided to stay the night in Dublin, but his girlfriend showed up. There was an argument. He left with his girlfriend. It was past 6 p.m. and at this point, JoJo was stranded in Dublin. Instead of staying in town, she decided to return to Kilkenny, although it's not known why. She headed to the main bus depot at the Bucharest station in Dublin City. She arrived at the station at 9 p.m. to find out that the only bus towards Kilkenny ends in Naas, which is 65 miles away. JoJo fell asleep, and around 10 p.m., the bus driver woke up to tell her they were in Naas. The town was quiet by this point, but again, she did not seek any hotel, but decided to hitchhike. I realized this was a different time, but if you're a true crime consumer, you know this is not safe to do. She got a ride from her elderly man to the town of Kilcullen, who urged her to seek shelter instead of hitchhiking, but she was insistent on getting home that night. In Kilcullen, she hitched with a younger man to the town of Moon, 45 miles away from home. At 11:30 p.m., when she arrived in Moon, the town was deserted, so she decided to find a phone booth where she called her friend Mary and told her about being stuck and that she was hitching. A car approached the phone booth, and JoJo told Mary to hold on. Then she returned to say she found a ride. This is the last contact anyone had with JoJo. There was a woman matching JoJo's description in the town of Castle Dermot, walking on the main road towards Carlow. While this cannot be confirmed as JoJo, it matches up with the time she would have arrived in Castle Dermot, around 11:30 and 11:40. A possible sign that night was in Kilmartin, 65 miles away from Moon, where a man saw a red Ford Sierra with British plates and 3 passengers, 2 men and a woman. While the first man left the car to urinate, the woman ran out of the car into the road. She was barefoot. The other man grabbed her by the waist, and the first man helped drag her back into the car. They sped away. Another witness saw a woman matching JoJo's description running from the phone booth in a red Toyota Carina. Possible one witness got the vehicle wrong. In 2020, JoJo Dullard's case was upgraded to a murder. They asked for information on a Sanyo black cassette player she had in her possession. In 2021, the information was released that a truck driver came forward when he heard about JoJo's case. He said he saw a woman running naked and panicked and screaming, but when he tried to help, she became more distressed. She was probably traumatized. He reported this in 95, but it was not asked to make a statement, but was asked later in 2021. Fiona Pender is a hairdresser and a model from Tullamore, 60 miles west of Dublin City. In the summer of 96, she was a 25-year-old living with her boyfriend John Thompson on Church Street. The couple temporarily relocated to London and moved back to Ireland since the winter of 1995. They were expecting their first child, and Fiona was 7 months pregnant. On August 22nd, 1996, Fiona spent the afternoon with her mother, Josephine Pender, shopping for items for the baby at Bridge Street Shopping Center. They returned to Josephine's home in Connolly Park and spent a few hours with her family. Around 7 p.m., Josephine and her son, Mark, dropped off Fiona at her apartment's entrance as she was tired from a busy day of shopping and being so far along. They made plans to see her the next day, but would never see her again. The next day, August 23rd, Josephine returned to find her blinds closed, and thinking she was sleeping, she went back home. Later that day, her father came by to find her blinds still closed. They returned on the 24th, but no answer. They called her boyfriend, but he said he had not seen her since August 23rd at 6 a.m., when he left to work on the family's farm in Mount Millick. He said he was not worried because he thought she was spending time with the family. John was the last person to see Fiona before she disappeared. There were 2 weird sightings. One where a man was walking home from a pub at 2 a.m. on the 23rd, and he saw 2 men place a rolled-up carpet in their 4x4 vehicle. The other was a man who was driving 20 miles from Tullamore in the Selbloom Mountains, where he saw a 4x4 vehicle driving erratically and had a sticker that said, "Keep her lit." There had been no explanation for either of these sightings. On April 24th, 1997, John, his father Archie, and his 3 sisters were arrested for Fiona's disappearance, but they were all released without charge because there was no evidence that they were involved. The couple fought at times, like normal couples, but there were no signs of a struggle or crime at the apartment. She also left personal belongings at home, including passport, clothes, and credit cards, discrediting any idea that she may have left to start a new life. No one else was ever arrested in Fiona's disappearance. In 2008, on Sleeve Bloom Way, between Laos and Offaly, a wooden cross was found carved with Fiona Pender. Ciara Breen was a 17-year-old who was living in Dundalk, which was 50 miles north of Dublin. She was last seen by her mother on February 13th, 1997 at 12:25 a.m. at her home in Bachelor's Walk, heading to bed. Prior to her disappearance, she spent the day with her mother. They had dinner at Roma Restaurant on Park Street. They went home and watched Bad Boys at home. Her mother checked on her at 2 a.m. and she was missing. The Guardian found a first-floor window open directly facing the road, open from the inside. It's believed she left to let someone in and left the window open to get back inside. It is also believed she was leaving to meet someone in a car since the window was facing near the road. Early in the investigation, found that Ciara was talking to an older man. Her mom overheard Ciara talking to a man in the garden, asking her if she'd seen anyone, and then her mother chased him away as he was too old to be talking with her 17-year-old daughter. Friends of Ciara said that they were at a fast food restaurant and the man was watching them. The man talked with Ciara, asking to see her later that night, and she told him that she would sneak out when her mother went to bed, which is something she had did regularly. She did run away to Northern Ireland, but returned a few days later. She was starting to get her life back on track, attending school, and planning her future. Her tutor described her as shy, not very street smart, not gullible, and very trusting. It's believed that she fell victim to a local predator in Dundalk. Unfortunately, there were possible predators known, local or not. In 2017, Liam Mullen was arrested as the prime suspect in the disappearance of Ciara Breen at the age of 55. He would have been 35 at the time of her disappearance. He died while in custody on July 6, 2017. Fiona lived in Ballyhit, which was in Wexford County and 90 miles south of Dublin. She was a single mother of an 11-month-old baby named Emma. On February 18, 1998, Fiona spent the night with friends at Butler's Pub in Broadway. The friends she was with that night were Nora, Joan, and Martina. They described her mood that night as happy and in good spirits. She did complain about pain in one of her arms, which was alarming as she was a victim of domestic violence in the past. Her ex-boyfriend and father of their daughter was also at the bar, away from Fiona's group at the bar, for the whole night. She left the bar with him around midnight. They walked to her home together, where he slept on the couch, and she went to her room upstairs. At 9 a.m., Fiona's arm was still bothering her, so she told her ex she was going to hitch a ride to the doctor's. At 9:30, he got his mother to take him back to her home, where Fiona and his daughter were staying while they went out for the night. Fiona never arrived to the doctor's, no signs of her hiking or reports from anyone who gave her a ride. Days later, neighbors spotted black trash bags outside her home. If she was missing, how did they get there? As a mother, her house was normally a little scattered with toys. However, when the police searched it, they found it was very clean. Weeks after her disappearance, a farmer came forward to say he found black trash bags on his property. In the bags, there were letters addressed to Fiona Sinnott. He did not know about Fiona, so he burnt the letters, thinking it was just someone who dumped the trash on his property. No trace of Fiona has been found since she disappeared. On September 12, 2008, a memorial plaque was set to be unveiled the next day, but before it could happen, it was stolen from Our Lady's Island Cemetery in Wexford. Her 2005, her case was upgraded to a murder investigation. Diedre Jacob was a 18-year-old student who was studying teaching at Strawberry Hill College in London. She was from Dublin and returned to her parents' home for summer holiday. On July 28, 1998, Diedre spent the early morning completing household chores. Around 10 a.m., she left her parents' home to visit Newbridge, 20 miles south of Dublin. Normally walking would take 30 minutes, but she planned on visiting her grandmother at her shop. She made it to her grandmother, then went to collect a bank draft at the Allied Irish Bank around 2:20 p.m. She took the bank draft to the post office and sent it to a college in London to pay for classes. Around 3 p.m., she started walking home and stopped briefly to talk with a friend she ran into. Right before 3:30, she arrived 300 feet away from her parents' home when she was stopped to speak to a neighbor. This is the last confirmed sighting of Diedre. Was at 3:30 p.m., standing on a grass verge away from her parents' home. No witnesses ever came forward about her disappearance after this time. Her road was country but surprisingly busy. She seemed to disappear into thin air, despite the fact that she was on a street she grew up on. She was carrying a bag that had a letter C-A-T on it. No trace of Diedre has ever been found. In 2005, her case was upgraded to a murder investigation due to new information acquired in the case. Claire Boylan was a single 36-year-old woman who was living with her parents. She lived in Tenure in southern Dublin. This area might sound familiar because Eva Brennan disappeared in this town after attending church. Claire was described as a shy and creature of habit. On March 2nd, 2003, she left home to meet a friend in Tullamore. On March 4th, her brother reported her missing when she failed to show up at work. This was out of character, and she has never missed work, and even if she did, she would talk to her boss. She never contacted her friend to make any plans or contacted her after. There's no proof that she went to Tullamore since she did not drive, meaning that she would have had to take a bus or a train, leading to her disappearance. She's been fatigued from her job as a bookstore manager. She showed no signs of wanting to disappear from her life, as she took no personal items except for a blue waist length jacket with a yellow collar. Her passport was noted to still be in her room. There were several sightings of Claire in Tenure. She was also known to walk around the area. Less than 2 weeks after her disappearance, on March 15th, the sightings completely stopped. The last confirmed time Claire was seen was at her parents' home. She was never contacted by any family or friends. No evidence has been found of where she went after her disappearance, or if there was foul play in her disappearance. Now I'm going to go over some theories. The first one is the theory of a serial killer. It's widely believed that serial killer was responsible for all these women disappearing. The victims were similar in demographic, all young and attractive. They disappeared in isolated areas. They got around by walking or public transportation, leaving them vulnerable. But most of the bodies were never found. It is believed that the potential killer could be local to the area, knowing remote areas to hide bodies. In 2000, Larry Murphy was arrested for kidnapping, raping, and attempting to murder a woman in Wicklow Mountains. He was interrupted by 2 hunters, and luckily the victim survived. He was sentenced to 15 years but was released after 10 and left Ireland. This could be why the disappearances stopped. There's no direct evidence linking him. However, his MO is similar and the time adds up, except for Ciara Boylan, as he was in prison. Some suspects said he could have had an accomplice. If there is a serial killer responsible, they could have stopped because of many reasons. He could have died, he could be incarcerated, or gotten too old, or fell in health. The next theory is that it could be multiple offenders. While the women have similar demographics and similar circumstances, it does not prove that the disappearances are linked. The ages vary from 17 to 37. Their features are different, and the locations are all different. The disappearances do not show a clear MO. Some of the victims have circumstances that could be the cause for their disappearances. Fiona Sinnott was suffering from domestic violence, and Ciara Breen left to meet someone she knew. The final theory is human trafficking. In the late 1990s, early 2000s, Europe had an increase of human trafficking. Some people believe that this could have happened to some of the women. They could have been indicated by a lack of evidence and bodies. They could be hidden in other countries. JoJo Dullard was hitchhiking from town to town, so her desperation to get home could have been an easy target to be taken advantage of. Fiona went missing, and her home was cleaned after her disappearance. This could have been traffickers cleaning the evidence. Before the murders and disappearances, the community saw Ireland as safe, but the illusion was soon shattered. Women became aware of the dangers of hitchhiking and walking alone at night. Yeah, you should be able to walk alone without getting murdered or abducted, but it's not how the world works. This is not a new idea. It's always been full of good people and evil people. The advancements in policing in Ireland occurred after these disappearances. They were criticized for their handling of cases, especially responded to missing person reports. Cold case units became more prominent, as well as the use of DNA database. They expanded the Missing Persons Bureau and improved communication with different units. Stronger laws involving domestic violence, stalking, sexual assaults were made, and requests for a missing person alert system were made simple, similar to the Amber Alert. I like to share lessons we can learn from these cases. It's not to blame victims, but to learn from mistakes. The big one to avoid is hitchhiking. 9 times out of 10 you might be fine, but the 10th time you might get into a vehicle with a killer. Not everyone has the best intentions. The other things that sparked concern for me was being vague about their plans. Always tell someone you're going, even if it's a friend and not your parent. I value having an honest policy with my daughter, but no, not everyone has that. So if there's someone else you trust, reach out to them. Legally, change is the most important thing. It's being fast on looking for missing persons. If there was a better alert throughout Ireland, maybe some of these could have been found. At the very least, we'd have more suspects or closure for the family. This case was an interesting one. I was unaware of Ireland's Vanishing Triangle. I knew about Diedre Jacob's case and was looking into it and was thrown down a rabbit hole. Unfortunately, there was not a lot of information about victims, so hopefully I did them justice. I am conflicted on which theory I believe most. The theory that I think I'm leaning towards is the various perpetrators. I think it could be multiple serial killers. Maybe one was a copycat. Some of these cases seem like it could be personal circumstances, like Fiona Sinnott, who had domestic violence history. But then human trafficking is plausible as well, or a mix of these. These cases may be coincidences and not related. Regardless of what really happened, one thing is for sure: the family has no closure. None of these cases are solved. Only 3 victims were found murdered. Most of the parents have no idea what happened to their children. If they ran away, which is unlikely, if they were murdered, died of exposure, or were abducted and still alive in captivity. I hope one day these cases are no longer a mystery and that the family has answers. I cannot imagine a world where I do not know what happened to my child. Thanks for listening to this case on Ireland's Vanishing Triangle. Again, please like, subscribe, comment your thoughts. And if you have any cases you want me to discuss, I have a request form in the description or leave them in the comments.